Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the Hypotheticast, the podcast where we interview a hypothetical guest. I'm Jules, and I've got here with me in the studio today
Dylan and Evan.
And our guest today, Mr. Thaddeus Clinch V, a genetically engineered human.
Designer baby, actually.
Oh, I apologize.
The correct terms.
Apologies. Sorry about that.
You goddamn mud man.
You mongrel.
But yeah, I'm a genetically engineered person. I'm immune to all genetic diseases, as well as being pretty much everything you've seen done by Photoshop, but just real.
Cool. So you're literally just Giga Chad. I mean, we can see you here in the studio, so I don't even know why I had to question that. I mean, you are just Giga Chad.
Yeah,
Giga
so.
Chad.
Of course. Yeah, so, I love it, but I don't know. What do you guys think about this whole thing? Are you guys one of those mud?
I feel like I don't know.
We're getting.
Just answer the question.
It seems like you have a very
Poor opinion.
poor opinion. You have a
non-genetically engineereds.
No, I just want to know what you guys think of the whole thing. Like genetic engineering.
It's pretty cool.
I think it's.
Well, I'm a weirdo who happens to be of the opinion that people should be made the old-fashioned way, but that's just me.
Why?
Like out of tubes?
No, how's that old-fashioned?
A little bit older than that.
Hypothetical.
Actually, alternatively, which tubes?
I personally think genetic engineering is fine if it's getting rid of genetic diseases and possibly prolonging life in general instead of creating narcissistic super celebrities.
But if everyone is, then no one would be.
True.
That would be.
If everyone's
die.
super, no one is.
Yeah.
It's literally the pitch.
If everyone's unique, no one's unique.
Exactly.
So at that point, if everyone's like a super.
Well, you can say that now.
Oh. Most of the world is full of nobodies.
Yeah, but you're saying it's not like everyone will be the same kind of
The eternal midway.
because different cultures have different beauty standards in the state.
Oh, man.
Unless they all wanted to look the same, which I doubt.
No one.
Well,
no
the
one
problem,
would want to do that.
the problem,
Except for cults, maybe.
well, the problem is
Maybe
there's an assumption there.
What?
You're assuming that there will be a widespread distribution of this technology outside of a specific class of people.
Right, for this hypothetical, but I mean, of course, I'm of the first generation of designer babies, but in the future, I mean, do you guys think it could get that way?
No, it will never be widespread.
No?
It will be eternally just a limited use technology.
I think.
For the mega rich.
Actually, I think it'd be widespread, but on the terms of it being medical treatment. Of preventing diseases or stopping diseases. Not necessarily from making cosmetic changes, though.
Well,
necessarily.
I think it's going to be kind of similar to. I think in many ways you will, especially in countries that have like government-funded healthcare.
Right.
You will see something equivalent to mandatory vaccination, but with genetic engineering.
I agree.
Yeah.
Where it's like
China.
We're the government, we're paying for all of the medical care. We don't want you to have the potential for cancer, so you have to get the cancer gene removed. And the problem with that, I think, should be pretty obvious from the get-go.
Is that it's forced?
Well, not only that it's forced, but also that, let's get down to it. Do we really trust the average scientist to mess around? Understand, it's not the average scientist, it's not the average doctor's messing around with your genetic code. It's they're messing around with the genetic code of your child.
Yes.
In utero. So I feel like there's almost like a caveman instinct where it's like, ooga booga, stop trying to f with my child, kind of thing.
I pointed this out to Thaddeus earlier. Hello.
Who's
that
Ryan?
Never met any Ryans.
My imaginary friend.
Clearly.
The argument of genetic engineering has a lot of similarities, I think, to abortion.
I agree.
Yeah, it does.
You're right.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it would probably depend on the country, right? If,
yes.
You're somewhere like China,
the
they would say, everyone must take this to, immunize themselves from
it
all
would,
diseases
It
and
would
stuff.
absolutely be mandatory, and they would make every citizen a super soldier.
Without question.
And then at that point, it might ripple because then America might be like, "Oh, they got super soldiers. Now we need super soldiers," and then that might.
A
Well,
second
no,
Cold War.
because well, so here's the thing: Cold War between nanomachine-powered, genetically engineered superhumans would be a lot cooler than the real Cold War. But unfortunately, that's not likely to happen. What's likely to happen is that the ruling elites of this country will see China and they'll go, "Oh wait, we need to adapt." So they'll start genetically engineering themselves, but the common person is never going to see the kinds of developments
I
that
think
they
it
will.
might be less expensive than you think. You know about CRISPR?
Vaguely.
So CRISPR itself is a enzyme in your DNA whose job is to fix DNA, basically. It's an enzyme that has an idea of what DNA is supposed to look like, and if it passes over DNA that's not that way, it fixes it. So what CRISPR as the procedure is where they basically program that enzyme to do a specific thing. Because since it already does that anyway, it's not actually them going in and changing the thing little by little. You just feed them a strand of DNA that's a DNA strand that you want, and then put that into a person, and then it does the work for you. And it's kind of the point where, like, some people
So it's a biological autoloader, basically.
and it's like way, because one of the reasons it's such a big thing isn't just because of how effective it is, but because of how much cheaper it is. Like,
So it's a genetic EXE file.
yes,
Does it carry on to the offspring of that?
That's
engineered
another
person?
good question.
it can.
Because if it
I think
does, then that'd be incredibly easy.
Well, let's also just acknowledge that regardless of the actual, like the real cost, the proximate cost, meaning the cost that people are going to incur, is going to be astronomical. Just as a means of limiting access to it.
Of limiting access.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be something that there's going to be any sort of widespread adoption of.
You know, you can buy
In this country, anyway.
You know, you can buy a kit with that enzyme on Amazon.
Yeah.
And it actually has it in there,
Yeah.
What are they called? Body hackers or something?
I think. But of course, those kits, you know, I've heard mixed things about them, but I've heard that, you know, you
Ordering
can't have...
genetic engineering off of Amazon seems a bit suspect, but that's just me.
Ordering a plastic case to shoot into my vein.
It's just, it comes across to me as more like one of those things that
Inject
seems,
yourself with amino
that
acids.
seems super implausible and pie in the sky at first, but like things like the internet and things like nuclear power.
You'll see. I
know.
think. I don't think the government is going to allow the common person to have it in this country, at the very least, because we don't have a structure that's built around centralized control like China does, and so China is going to basically start implementing it as widely and quickly as possible. Consequences, you know, regardless.
Yeah.
But America's never going to do that because you know the problem is it requires a lot of good faith on the part of it requires a lot of good intent on the part of the ruling class in order to just assume that they're willing to give us that technology.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? Because if it's like something in the private sector, again, it depends on the country. But like if it's something that's developed in the private sector, and it can be, if it can be to the point where it's like a kit you buy, it could just become like a thing that people give out just for profit. You know what I mean? And like, so I think it's so hard to, you know, predict what will happen just because of that. Like, just because of we're not sure exactly how easy this will be to get. You know.
Yeah, and if they're oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say it all depends on who invents it and where.
Yeah.
On like the distribution of it, on how restricted it is. Because if a government creates it, then they have more of a incentive to restrict the access and make more monies. But if just a random person does it, then he might just give it away.
I think
basically,
if it's made within a private sector, there would definitely be black market deals.
Without
such
question.
And then you'd probably see like people who get stricken with cancer because it's gone wrong or something of the sort.
I think you're going to see that regardless of
already
whether
been.
it's open or not.
Because it's already been invented.
Nothing short of
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
But it's not. Why?
Perfected.
Why hasn't it been widely accepted?
guys.
Because
Open source genetics.
There's already
I got a new mod here. Install it into your bones.
Here's the new patch.
Get yourself some shiny bones.
I mean, we've already established that open source works better than closed source. So if it works better for software, why would it not work better for hardware?
The reason it's not widespread is purely because it hasn't been perfected. It's the same thing with Elon Musk's Neuralink shit. Like it's all there. They just need to. That's why it's such a big thing, because like we're at the point where it exists. We just need to work out the bugs with it. You know what I'm saying?
What about the I guess this would be a good segue. Are there any like current ethical concerns with it?
Everything you guys have just said.
Well, there's also other untouched ethical concerns, at least in this conversation.
Right, but in order to see that it works, you would have to test it on humans, and
that's a problem.
That's an incredibly great risk, because it's not just a medicine that you can undo or treat.
Yeah.
It's something that could make your baby into goop.
I'll be perfectly honest with you. That's not even one of the ethical criticisms I even thought of in the moment. Oh, I mean, that one didn't even come to mind. So you got me beat there.
That's not a big concern though.
It's not,
because to do that, it would have to.
If I was a parent, it would be.
Well, it's not in the scientific community, because if it were capable of doing that, it would have done it naturally. Because the idea with CRISPR is that it's a thing that's already, your body's full of CRISPR enzymes already.
Right.
So you feed it a DNA strand that already exists, and the fail rate of the enzyme is the fail rate of it naturally. So the only thing that's changing really is what it's kind of like, if it were to be able to turn your baby into goop, we would already have goop babies without, obviously that's an exaggeration.
Well, this is just CRISPR we're talking about at this point, but with respect to more advanced genetic engineering,
because all of it uses CRISPR. Because the only other things we have are the ones before CRISPR. Genetic engineering is extremely tedious. You have to go in and turn on and off all of the individual. I don't know if that would be even something you use. I don't even know if that has a benefit. If it's like better at
You think like in the future when a woman is pregnant, they give her a scorecard.
It's like the baby.
No, it's
blue eyes, blonde hair, and
it's like a character creator.
Literally a character creator.
Yeah.
That's a terrifying future.
Pretty much.
That's a really horrifying future.
No, that's what all of the people. That's one of the things. That's one of the easiest things. Cosmetic changes are probably one of the easiest things you could do with CRISPR, because most of the things,
changing eye color and stuff.
Most of the things that make people look different.
Could you change someone's race using CRISPR?
Oh my god!
Yeah,
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Completely.
So you can change melanin, but they probably still have
bone structure.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So you could definitely change eye color and hair color and stuff.
And at least on a cosmetic scale, your race. Mm-hmm. At least on a cosmetic scale.
Yeah. All races will be on the color swatch. On the color swatch.
I think
red, green.
I think going back.
Alex Jones.
Red.
I think going back to what you said earlier, Evan. I think this really is something akin to abortion in a way, at least with respect to this specific portion of the issue. Not just testing it, but also actually doing it.
Yeah.
Because if it fails,
if I were to do that with my kid, there'd have to be a 99% chance that nothing goes wrong.
Well, so this is I think where I would probably split off from a lot of people where unless I get told your child has a genetic disease, I'm not going to have my child.
Yeah, I think that'll be a lot of people.
Yeah.
But like you said a second ago, or I mean, like I said a second ago, the risk of something going wrong doesn't increase because it's already in you.
Well, see, this is, I think.
Well, it changes you regardless, though.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
The thing
Which
is,
still means it's still introducing some sort of risk.
But it decides those things while you're being made anyway. It just changes what it decides.
But
Yeah, but the other factor is, do you get to make those decisions ethically?
Not the baby.
ethically, yeah.
No, what I'm saying is, the parent, do you get to make those decisions ethically?
I mean, yes.
Wait.
This
ethically?
this ties
Yeah,
back
ethically.
into the abortion thing.
Yeah, this is kind of like that.
Well,
Of
right.
like, should the baby get the choice or should the parent?
Well, how does the baby get the choice? The answer is there's no way to do it.
Well, that'll be the debate. That'll be the debate. Right.
I think this will also change the discussion about abortion, like, completely. There will be entirely new lines of thought and discussion once it becomes possible to, like, fix genetic diseases in utero.
True.
I mean, because, like, one of the primary arguments
For abortion.
has to do with the principle of, well, what if there's a genetic defect in the fetus?
Right.
And I think, you know, once you eliminate that, you can just be like, okay, well, what's the argument at that
Yeah,
point?
what else?
Yeah, and then the number of sort of proposed moral justifications kind of gets whittled down further and further. But
Do you guys, what do you guys think the upper limits of this could be? Because some people have said that we could use it to help, like, colonize other worlds. Because one of the reasons the biggest hurdles of doing that is that if you have,
I think, and I was about to say,
sorry about that. Technical difficulties. What I was just saying was that, with genetic engineering, like, you could make humans that can live on planets other than Earth and won't get born, like, fucked up. You know what I mean?
there's a...
Well, definition of fucked up, right? But
Well, no, I was going to say there's a much more sinister usage for this close to home. It's going to be once this technology becomes widespread enough that, like, anybody can use it, it's going to be nigh on impossible to, like, determine paternity.
Oof.
Because you understand, like, currently the percentage of, like, kids who aren't born to their genuine fathers is, like, relatively unknown, but it's estimated that it's been pretty consistent over history. And the problem is, once you start just straight up splicing once you start splicing genes to the point where you mangle it so you can't even tell it at a certain point, or even just cosmetically changing the appearance of the child, like, there's going to be a point where it becomes almost entirely impossible to determine paternity. And again, I understand that this is, ooga booga caveman brain stuff, but the truth of the matter is the ooga booga caveman brain stuff matters because the caveman is holding a hammer with which to smash all of the technology. And if you anger the caveman enough, the caveman will just start smashing your precious computers. So I think that it's really important that we at least address the ooga boogas.
that is the foundation of humanity.
It is. No, seriously. And to be fair, paternity is unquestionably probably the most ooga booga of ooga boogas. I don't think you can think of anything that's more, like, foundational to, like, caveman brain than the child is mine or the child is not mine.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And, that's the thing, right? Like, I think that goes for, like, most technologies that make a huge paradigm shift. But, humans don't really have a track record of, like, backtracking once a technology, is discovered. So I think, because even if a country does it, another country will, and then you might get what you have now with, like, the plastic surgery industry in South Korea, where where, like, everyone goes there for it. So maybe even if it's not legal here, they'd go, I'm gonna get my designer baby and those South Korean CRISPR.
This is the other thing. It's like, you ever see that news article? This was a while ago. This was, like, years ago, but it stuck with me because of how, like, dystopic it was. It was a man was suing his wife because she produced ugly children because she had plastic surgery.
Wait,
and didn't tell him.
Oh.
The plastic surgery caused the children to be ugly?
No, the plastic surgery made her look better than she actually looked.
Oh, and she just had bad genes.
She just had bad genes that were covered up by the plastic surgery. And I can't help but feel really bad for those kids who are forever going to be known as those kids whose dad sued their mom because they were ugly. That's really, really, really sad.
No, did the lawsuit go through?
But I don't remember.
Oh.
But here's the thing. Maybe one of our listeners knows. Here's the thing. Write to us at P.O. Box. No. Here's the thing, okay? So, I understand that that's a bad thing. That's not okay. That's not nice to do that to your children. Right. But,
okay,
the caveman part of my brain,
right,
that's adjacent to the monkey part of my brain, that's adjacent to the lizard part of my brain. Okay?
Everything. Every animal in here.
Every animal in here. The caveman part of my brain goes, but she lied. and that's the only reason I think it didn't get laughed out of court, is because the judge probably also had a caveman brain that went, but she lied. And I feel like that's going to be an even bigger issue moving forward with like genetic engineering, because it's just the next step beyond plastic surgery.
But wouldn't the children carry the genes? Well,
maybe you're assuming.
Maybe. Yeah,
that's a big assumption.
I think
there's no way to tell.
But
I think they do, because because you make the change in utero, and then they have those genes,
right?
And then they can pass because you're not passing.
Well, also, has anyone ever like determined what the risk of sterilization is?
Is again the same risk that CRISPR already gives.
Okay, I don't know.
Again, like, that's the reason that this is getting a lot of traction, because genetic engineering's been around for a while.
Right.
But all these arguments, right, with like, oh, what if we fuck up the genome? Like, CRISPR has very, very little chance of doing that because it doesn't now. So you're not changing CRISPR, you're just giving it different instructions. You know what I mean? It'd be like if you had like a...
But that's a big difference.
No, because you're still giving it DNA. You know, like, you know what I mean? Like, the change seems drastic, but from a biological level, it's not. You're just basically flipping a switch from on to off.
Let's also ask a couple of, I think, arguably more interesting questions than just like, oh, well, what about the deformed fetuses? So, what if a government just decides, okay, we're going to mandate that everyone gets genetically engineered so that they can't break the law?
How would you do that?
Make them more suggestive.
Just make them highly obedient.
Oh, yeah. That's the thing you probably could do.
No, you could absolutely do that, because there are people who are obedient and people who aren't.
Pretty much speed running, like selective breeding.
Yeah, pretty much. And the problem with...
I'm sorry.
The big problem with speed running selective breeding should be pretty obvious.
Are we segueing into eugenics now?
Oh, can we?
Do you think there will be like neo-eugenics?
So
where people specifically make types of designer babies because that's how they want their lineage to go?
So here's the thing. So quote unquote neo-eugenics is just the way people are, but if you give them the tools to do it.
So yes.
No, so this is so this is the thing. There's no such thing as non-eugenic breeding other than dysgenic breeding, which is like, at a macro scale. Every single individual person attempts eugenic breeding when they attempt to produce offspring. Every single person.
All right.
There's no one who intentionally decide. You know what? I can't even say that, because there probably are some people who are that messed up. Okay. No one mentally stable attempts to make children with the desire to have them be less genetically fit. That's just not a thing that nature provides for.
Mm-hmm.
Humans don't naturally do that.
But to be clear, you're saying that people unconsciously make that decision.
No, people consciously make that decision. And I'll give you the most obvious example ever.
All right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Deciding that somebody would or wouldn't be a good parent is an example of eugenic breeding.
Well, that's...
I mean, just seeing someone as hot. Because
I mean, yeah, that's also an example of eugenics.
I'd still argue that's...
Because you're just seeing...
You don't want to take the real red pill here, which is that everyone is a eugenicist.
I mean, I know But
the distinction is that people like me are just open and honest about the fact that we want children who are healthy.
Yes, and I do too, but they aren't.
Well, there you go.
They aren't deliberately.
Yes,
saying
they are deliberately healthy. That's the goal. The goal is to produce children who are deliberately healthy.
No, those people aren't deliberately saying that they advocate for eugenics. They just
they
naturally
just are advocating for eugenics.
Yes. Which, in nature,
that's all natural selection is.
Natural, and I hope I don't. Someone's gonna shoot me for this. Huh?
What?
What are they gonna shoot you for?
No, I'm
for
just
advocating eugenics being natural.
No, it's not that eugenics is natural. It's that natural selection is just eugenics.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
I guess it seems you two have a different definition of eugenics. What's your definition of eugenics?
Isn't eugenics where you organize the population in order to strengthen the genetic line?
Yeah, well,
like the Aryan race and the Nazis.
I think what you.
Ah, man, why'd you have to bring that up?
If I may,
it's the easiest.
We have to bring up Margaret Sanger to counteract that.
If I may interpret what you're asking,
the founder of Planned Parenthood.
You're only referring to what if we start doing what if we start
producing
doing harmful shit preventing ugly people from breeding or stuff like that. Is that kind of what you're more asking?
Kind of.
It's harmful.
Okay, well, that has to do with government policy.
Eugenics that's harmful to people who are already alive.
So that would be.
So I mean that eugenics in today's world is trying to produce a genetically superior being through genes and selective breeding.
No,
I mean alone, I don't think that's wrong. But once you again, like you said, it's natural.
No, I'm not saying it's wrong, but that's what it is, right?
No, well, so this is the thing. Let's say you meet a girl.
So
okay,
wait, let me. Yeah. I'm sorry. So neo-eugenics, at least in my mind, or new eugenics, if you even want to call it that.
No, I'm fine with new
is where, instead of selectively breeding, they'd instead use CRISPR or something akin to that to then make their child genetically superior. So it would still.
That's literally just the goal of genetic engineering.
Yeah.
So, it's all just eugenics.
So it's eugenics, but it's in a.
Well, it's positive eugenics rather than negative eugenics, which is an actual historical distinction.
As long as it
does
not
positive
include race.
Right. So really.
I said as long as it doesn't include race, it's fine.
Okay.
As in if you racially change your child, isn't that wrong?
Why?
Why is that wrong?
Why does race matter?
That's a thing, right? If this gets to that point, I feel like race won't. Because if you can just make your kid a different race, or at least a different color, I feel like that's gonna blur a lot of because a lot of people many people.
But see, I think that's not just an assumption, but it's also almost a presumption. Because the truth of the matter is, there is something deep down in the innate, probably in the lizard brain, let's be real, that says, I want my offspring to look like me.
Yes.
Right.
The reason that exists is specifically to prevent paternity fraud. That's the reason that instinct exists. That's the reason that it evolved. Is because if the males of the species don't care whether or not the offspring appear to be theirs, then they're just gonna get cocked.
So you think most people won't do that? Change the race of their baby?
I think most people will not. I think for the same reason that I think it's pretty obvious that because the races still exist, people have a tendency to just not not leave their. They have a tendency to not leave their race in general. I mean, the statistics on interracial marriage, for example, indicate that it's just not a very common phenomenon.
Who here?
And just for the audience, I am mixed race, just so we're clear.
So you were saying earlier that if someone were to genetically engineer their child to be a different race than that of the parents, that's not wrong. Why wouldn't that be wrong?
What do you mean?
As in, I was saying that was wrong and in a way kind of fucked up, but...
Well, I'm saying that it is wrong and fucked up.
Okay, I was too,
but
for some reason we disagree.
Well, no. No. So what I'm trying to kind of hit at here is the idea that race would be eliminated doesn't really seem to track, because race hasn't been eliminated anyway.
Right.
And it exists.
Right.
quantitatively. So,
Do you think eventually, if we get to a point, race will stop being a thing?
no.
No?
Because eventually, because you understand, so I'll give you the example of the Serbians and the Croatians
Okay.
right now. Okay,
All right.
if you pulled, if you were an alien in a flying saucer and you abducted a random Serbian and you abducted a random Croatian, right, and you sat them in rooms that are different rooms, right,
Right.
and then you abducted a random person from like America,
Right.
okay, and you said this person is Serbian or Croatian. And you threw them in each room, and you said, then you pulled them out, and you're like, okay, which one was which? They would have no fucking clue.
Right.
Because the Serbians and the Croatians are genetically identical. Like, they are the same group of people genetically. They speak the exact same language,
Right.
okay? The only difference is they use a different alphabet to write it down, and the Croatians are Catholics, and the Serbians are Orthodox Christians.
So then they're considered two different races
But
because of that.
But in the 90s, these two groups of people committed genocides against one another.
Okay.
In the 90s. So you understand,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
living memory for 80% of the population of these countries, right?
Right.
They committed genocide against one another on a racial basis. So the thing about this is, like, if two groups of people who are that similar to one another
so
can
weird.
happily commit racial genocide against one another, then no amount of genetic engineering is ever going to eliminate race, because race apparently can exist on like a political level, not even on a genetic level. But once you start talking about the actual genetic level racial differences, it just seems insurmountable. I don't think you're ever going to eliminate it as a factor in society.
Do you think it'll change?
Definitely.
A little change, yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, I was going to suggest this earlier. Let's say, you know, you guys could, like, there was zero risk of anything going wrong with affecting you guys' kids. I know, Jules, you probably wouldn't anyway. Would either of you? And if so, how?
If so, how would I engineer them?
Uh-huh.
Oh, like without any risk?
Yeah, there's zero risk.
Dude, 100% disease free. And also extending their telomeres so they live for like 500 years. If I can't make myself immortal, I'm going to make my kids immortal.
Would you...
Oh, but you see, that actually is how people are immortal.
Would
Make them even more immortal. If they live for 500 years, that's a lot of kids they can
Look,
make.
just do this
go. Now you're thinking with
do this cyberpunk thing and download your brain into a chip and then put that chip into your kid.
But it's a copy of you. It's a
Now
copy of
that's disturbing.
That's another... No, it's not here.
There are really horrifying implications to that.
you. Now,
What about... Would you not do anything cosmetically?
no, I don't think so.
No.
Why would I?
Even if, like...
If it's like something like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a negative cosmetic example, but like a cleft palate, that's still a genetic disease, isn't it?
A cleft palate is actually a serious genetic abnormality.
so I'm more saying,
that's
like-
not.
Like changing their
Yeah,
eye
that's a
color or
midline
something?
defect. That's not.
So, like...
That's not nothing.
I'm not trying to
Right.
say, like, change its entire... Because he said earlier about, like, you want your kid to look like you.
Oh,
It still looks like it's your kid. It's just, like, would you make it, like, a hot version of your kid?
That's not a.
no. I tried to keep them as naturally them as possible, except make them safer, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Now, if I could genetically engineer myself, yeah, I would.
I would give
Why
myself
wouldn't you?
a 3-foot dick. What about you?
What about you?
I would probably.
I said peeking the mic there. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah, I would
bad.
probably like you. I would make my kid be 100% disease free, but also I would probably change like cosmetically a little bit, like hair color and eye color, just to make them like hazel eyes and like black, brown or black hair, just to make sure. You know,
to make sure.
yeah, you never know what kind
Make
of
sure they don't
hair
come out
color.
green.
You gotta make sure their eye color and everything matches mine.
You know something I've
Because
read?
why not?
I've read that apparently humans have a lot of genes that are there but are just turned off.
Yeah.
And if you turn them on, you could have like green hair. Or so,
Yeah.
like, maybe not that specifically,
That
but
sounds
like,
really cool.
but like, if you turn those on, there would be pretty much no negative, because all of the negatives are kind of like stuff in the
Well,
wild.
the
like,
negative is having green hair.
okay,
Looking like
yeah. I'm just trying to say, there's no.
Well, this is I think the great folly of all of this genetic engineering. There was a reason that those genes got turned off.
But what I was saying was
Yeah.
that one of the reasons is because it would screw us over in nature.
Right,
What?
but the problem is you're assuming we're not in nature right now.
This isn't nature.
This is
This is
nature.
my house.
No.
Well, the only animal, at least that I can think of, that actively hunted humans was the saber-toothed tiger and some sort of Russian bear.
Well, I mean,
Some
if you
sort of
really want to get into the conspiracy theories, Neanderthals,
Oh.
but we won't get into that today. So,
I mean, that's less of a conspiracy theory because...
well, no, I mean the conspiracy theory about what they actually looked like.
Oh.
Yeah, no. So
Okay, we
they're
Weren't they ginger with blue eyes?
no, that would be hilarious though.
Ginger
No,
with blue eyes.
No, I've heard that Neanderthals had red hair and blue eyes.
yeah, no.
Man, that's like this.
So the problem is that all of the reconstructions of Neanderthals are done on the basis of skeletal remains
Right.
because that's all that's left.
Yeah.
So the issue is that those
the-
reconstructions are done based on using a human face as a template for designing the Neanderthal face,
Okay.
based on the Neanderthal skeleton.
Oh god, do they look like lizard people?
No. So here's the thing. What they look like is they look like so when you compare the skull shape of a human to the skull shape of a Neanderthal,
Right.
the Neanderthal skull is bigger, but more significantly, the eye sockets are much bigger.
Anime.
So, no, that's actually way worse than that. So, what it results in is a reconstruction that basically just looks like a slightly bigger-eyed human. So, but here's the problem. Those reconstructions are done assuming that Neanderthals looked like humans.
Right.
But the problem is that the Neanderthal skull is a lot closer to a chimpanzee skull than it is to a human skull in terms of, like, structure and skeletal tilt. Like, with respect to, like, how the spine and the, like, chest cavity. So, like, the chest cavity on a Neanderthal is significantly bigger.
Right.
So their trunks, their torsos are much bigger.
Their trunks.
No, that's the actual anatomical term. This is the trunk.
Oh, really?
That's real. Seriously. Anyway, so, but basically, the issue is that if you do a reconstruction of what a Neanderthal looks like, basing it off of the approximate design of any other primate other than a human, it looks like an actual monster movie monster. Because it has gigantic eyes that have excellent night vision, because that's the only reason that any creature has gigantic eyes.
This is so scary.
It's covered in fur,
Right.
and it's bigger than a human.
Okay, so now we have three things. We have Ooga Booga, a bear, and a tiger with big teeth.
Yes.
We are
So-
no longer in such an environment.
No,
so
but here's the problem. Here's the problem.
arguing
No.
that.
This is important. This is important. Those genes got turned off, and that's what allowed us to get to this point. That's what allowed us to get to the point where we're having a podcast about whether or not we should turn on the genes that create green hair.
But
So
turning
no.
on green hair.
No. So this is important. Why do you think that f***ing with literally tens of millions of years worth of proven track record research is a smart idea? It really does seem like
Do you think there will be a cascade effect? You activate one gene and that activates like several other negative...
I don't know if that's the case, but what I do know is that those traits aren't present in people.
For a reason?
Do you mean,
Not only for a reason, but specifically because the people who had those traits died out.
do you mean, when you say
So,
That's a good point.
when you say cascade, do you mean like automatically, or like we decide to turn all of them on?
Automatically, as in you turn on one and then it flips the
that's
switch on
certainly
another.
something that a lot of people...
No, because
Point
they're
to.
well, because that's not how genes. You don't turn on one gene and then it turns on the other gene because they're unrelated.
Well, the other...
They're not unrelated, but you know what I
So I
mean.
want-
Well, yeah. They don't impact one another.
Yeah.
But like, for real, this is something that I've noticed a lot of, just in general, is this tendency to be like, yeah, sure, nature decided that we shouldn't have this thing, and specifically killed off everyone who had it. Let's reintroduce it.
I think that
What could go wrong?
Well, I think it should be kind of a case-by-case basis, because what could go wrong with green hair now?
Okay, see, you say what could go wrong with green hair now, but
know,
the problem
I
is
know.
that to me, I hear that and I just hear, what could possibly go wrong?
Because we've already done that naturally, like with the lactose intolerant gene.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's supposed to we've turned it off for most people. People who are lactose intolerant are normal.
Right.
Everyone
No.
else.
So this is the thing, though. We have a proven track record of being able to process lactose, not in any way, shape, or form negatively impacting the rest of the genetic structure or the survivability of the species. So if you want to, like, say, okay, well, let's genetically engineer people so that no one's lactose intolerant, I don't really have too much of an argument against it because we have a proven track record of being able to being lactose tolerant being an advantage. So I don't see any downside to it. We know that there isn't a downside to it because, like, what is it? It's like half the population of the planet can process lactose successfully.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, clearly that works.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know.
Well, I think it would probably be tested, right? Like, so one person.
I think it would probably be tested.
I would hope so.
Look, listen.
That's a big assumption.
Listen, they'd say, like, okay, let's give what. I don't know why we keep saying green hair, but let's just use that.
Yeah.
We give one person green hair and see if they die.
So here's the.
And if they don't, then we'll allow it.
So
Now, here's
so-
the ethical concern. Would it be a baby or would it be an adult that consents?
Well, when
I
it comes,
imagine
it'd have to be a baby.
Would it, though?
well,
Yeah.
some of it doesn't. Like, if it's something that can change within a life, like I think with hair you could, because you would turn the gene on and then you would start growing that hair. But because the enzyme is constantly repairing your DNA and stuff your whole
Right.
life, so it wouldn't be like immediate, but you could flip it on and then within a certain span of time it would manifest.
Yes.
But it has to be something like that changes within one.
Well, also, can we just acknowledge for a moment that the only two options would be government or private production of this stuff, right?
I think it'd be both.
Well, yeah. So, but here's the problem.
Black market.
No, well, that's still private. So here's the thing. The government injected a bunch of U.S. Army aviators with syphilis in the 1940s. It was called the Tuskegee experiments. They did that just to see what would happen,
Aviators? Like, why?
like pilots.
Okay, but why?
Well, because they were black, and it was fine to do medical experiments on black people because this country's f***ed in the head. Okay? So let's start with that. That's the government. So the government just injects people with syphilis just to f*** with them, right? So that's the government. And then let's use the most recent example of private corporations being, I think, literally worse than any villain in fiction. Because, like, if you want to look at Purdue Pharmaceuticals, right? We keep finding out more and more and more about how they literally designed OxyContin to be an addictive overdose drug and then intentionally peddled it in regions that were economically depressed, knowing that they would have higher rates of substance abuse because they were economically depressed, which means they would get more sales.
Right.
So, so we literally know that the private corporations are willing to, like, prey upon you, poison you, and murder you.
Yeah.
And we know the government is willing to prey upon you, poison you, and murder you. Right. So my question is, can we trust either party here to genetically engineer our children? Because I don't. This is the thing. So, like, 50 years ago, right? A decent chunk of the population born 50 years ago is still alive today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. They got, I think, 4 vaccines, right? Their whole lives, they got 4 vaccines. Right. You know what the current ration of vaccines is for a child born today? It's over 40 injections.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the problem. That's just bullshit. Here's the thing. If the people born 50 years ago are able to live all the way through to the present day with 4 shots, then guess what? You don't need more than those 4 shots to live, apparently, with the present environment of disease and genetics. So Like, they're just going to continue to, like, monetize it. Or if it's the government, they're just going to start injecting you with random research chemicals. We're going to wake up at one point and just find out that a bunch of people, instead of getting dosed with the genetic CRISPR stuff, they instead got dosed with LSD or something. Like, you guys know the CIA literally ran an entire project trying to develop psychic warfare?
Yeah.
The U.S. Army attempted to practice chaos blood magic to see if it worked. Like, don't pretend like these people will not do insane shit just to f*** with you.
Okay, wait, I want to hear about that one, the Chaos Blood Magic.
Okay, so, the Stargate Project.
Short tangent.
The Stargate Project.
Right.
Okay, so not to be confused with Stargate SG-1, which came out about 5 years after the actual Stargate Project.
Okay.
This, I think, was an intentional disinformation campaign, but we'll ignore that for a moment. Well, no, because you understand, the Stargate, the TV show...
The franchise.
The franchise was partnered with the U.S. Air Force. That's the reason that they were able to shoot at Cheyenne Mountain. That's the reason that they had a bunch of actual Air Force personnel in their actual uniforms in the show. Because it was literally sponsored by the U.S. military.
Well, that sounds like less of a conspiracy, more like a theory.
That's just a fact. But anyway, so Project Stargate was literally where the U.S. Army employed a bunch of chaos blood magic practitioners to try and perform blood magic. Because they wanted to see if they could weaponize it. And then we have to acknowledge the fact that the CIA has repeatedly drugged people to try and brainwash them and make them mind control subjects. So, like, the government is not a trustworthy, like, applier of any form of genetic manipulation of the human genome.
Jules.
Yes. I apologize. This is a big tangent.
But he's right, though.
Yes, he's right.
Right.
That's not the problem, though.
I'm sorry. I'm taking up the entire podcast. That's my fault. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
All I was gonna say was that goes for, like, you know, every product and medicine, like, ever.
Yes.
Yes. So when it comes to genetic engineering, like, I think it's obvious that it'll be abused the hell out of by everyone.
Yeah.
But I just think it's all about net gain. You know what I mean? Like, you know, same with, like, what you're talking about.
That's kind of bleak, man.
Well, it might be bleak, but it's kind of how we've been doing since forever. Because, I mean, you know, every drug has been abused, but, like, you know, I think, like, you know, antibiotics have done more good in the world than harm, and I don't know how you'd measure that.
I mean, you say that, but the problem is now, because of the overuse of antibiotics...
And you're right.
Guess what's happening?
You're right, but across...
They're developing... The diseases are developing immunity to antibiotics, which is, by the way, to be clear, the overuse of antibiotics is as a result of the pharmaceutical companies desiring to sell more antibiotics.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctors being trained at education centers called colleges, that...
Education center.
That's a weird way to put it. I realized as I was saying it. But the doctors being trained by people who are not really experts in any of the shit, because it's just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. But again, that's my point. Like, it's all bad. It's just that on all human history, I think the amount of lives saved and made better with it outweighs the amount of, you know, lives made worse. Maybe that's me being optimistic. I don't know. I don't know how you'd measure that.
I think you're
Well,
being
you
far
can't
too
measure it.
optimistic. I think you're being far too optimistic.
Yeah.
People always try to over other people for gain.
That's what I said.
Yeah. Oh.
Well, yeah, this is the thing is, I think
Where did
I'm
my
just
brain
more
go?
pessimistic about... I think I'm just more pessimistic about human nature.
I'm saying...
I mean, you're not wrong.
No,
Well, this is the problem. I'm very rarely wrong.
I'm not saying he's wrong either. Well, if you didn't hear what I said...
No, I did.
I'm sorry.
I said that, yes, that will happen.
Yes.
But I think that happens with everything, like every medicine and technology ever created.
Yes.
You just kind of have to look at it in terms of like net gain or loss. And
Is
again,
it worth living in Innsmouth? That's my question.
what?
Because
it's not Innsmouth.
no, so this is important. This is important.
Would you
You
become
gotta
fish?
understand the price of the blonde, blue-eyed Aryan Ubermensch who will come out of this program inevitably. The downside to it is you also will end up with Innsmouth.
Why Innsmouth?
Because fish people are an inevitability as soon as you start having genetic engineering.
Now, are you saying that as
Okay,
a
but
negative side effect, or people
what's wrong with
just
fish
just being
people?
weird?
No, no. So what I'm
If
saying
people
is,
want to look like fish, let them.
okay. There's an old Nikola Tesla quote that I think is one of the greatest quotes ever uttered by any human, which is, "You will live to see man-made horrors beyond your comprehension." That is a Nikola Tesla quote.
That's like Lovecraft.
It is. So here's the thing.
Based.
Like, literally based. So, the basest of all basts. So here's the thing, though. Like, we gotta understand that this genetic engineering is going to be used in two different ways. Way number one is it's going to be used to produce the Übermensch. And I mean that in both the Nazi sense and also in the Nietzschean sense, just so we're clear. That's going to be an outcome. And the secondary outcome is it's also going to be used to produce a slave class of people who are stupid and physically capable of doing whatever labor is put in front of them. But they're going to be literally just an entire class of people who are just going to be slaves. And they're going to be genetically slaves. And it may or may not be worse if they're genetically predisposed to like being slaves. Because let's be real here, once you get into the genome editing shit, there's going to be weird shit that comes up. So the question is, are you okay with genetically engineered slave castes? Because I'm not.
You may have an interesting point. What if they are genetic engineered to like it?
Ugh. What if we already are? What if that's why so many people like subscribe to OnlyFans and all this weird?
No, that's not it.
Because
No, that has to do with that has to do with the combination of over socialization and hyper reality.
Yeah, but
That's
like,
what that is.
But yeah, but what I'm saying.
Over socialization.
Would be the opposite.
No, so
Not being social.
no,
enough,
so
I want
so
that
so
comfort.
over socialization doesn't refer to the actual amount of genuine socialization that one does.
Right.
Over socialization means that social interactions are given overemphasis.
Okay. then.
That's what over socialization means in an academic sense.
But all I was saying was like, that's the thing with genetic engineering is that you can change things so fundamentally that like if you have a slave caste, which just uttering that word, like, it sounds objectively awful.
Yeah, Thaddeus.
Yeah, Jules. But like, if you had a race, if you engineered people,
A race.
well, that's
If
fine.
you had a race, Thaddeus.
Shut up. I am all races. You know this.
You are, it's true. I've seen it.
To have like complete and utter emotional fulfillment from doing labor,
Right.
like at that point, it's like, is that even
Yes.
wrong? Like, you know, but like, why?
Yes.
Like, why?
Is it wrong?
Because they are not genuinely that way.
But you did. You made them to be
No,
genuine.
no. So this is important. They are not genuinely that way.
But why does that matter?
Because
You mean
you're
because
making,
authenticity is the fundamental building block of reality.
because you're making
But-
a slave cast, Ryan.
but
That's why it's
Not
right.
Ryan Thaddeus.
Thaddeus.
But
But genetic engineering.
Baba-booey.
But genetic engineering is always that.
What?
Yes.
So if you genetically engineered people to be immune from diseases, that's wrong because it's not genuine.
No.
No,
That's
Why is-
different
why
because
is
you're not
that?
manipulating. So
that is
so there's a
positive
massive
effect.
No, so let's also be clear. There's a massive difference between manipulating people's natural inclinations and tendencies versus altering people's physiology.
Why?
Because
Like morally?
yes,
Yeah, why?
Because
What
one
do you mean,
allows
why?
one allows a person to survive and keep on living. The other one makes a slave cast.
Okay, but see, that's the thing, right?
So here's the
But that's
problem,
thing.
though.
Hold on, let me finish. You've
Are you saying it's
I've
okay
talked enough.
because they
But-
want to be a
But
slave?
listen, because this is why I'm saying it's so. This is why I'm saying.
you know the joke about libertarians.
This is why I'm. This is why I'm
tell you
saying
later.
it changes things so fundamentally because you just keep saying it makes a slave cast like that
does.
alone. Obviously,
Makes
it's-
it bad?
Obviously,
Thaddeus.
like slavery.
Let me
alone makes it
finish.
bad?
God
Okay,
damn.
I'm sorry.
Obviously, just saying that, even when I say that, it's a bad thing. But what I'm saying is that this changes things so fundamentally, it raises the question of if that is even bad.
So I have a question.
Because
Thaddeus.
think about all of the. Well, let me finish.
Okay.
Because all of the things that make slavery bad has to do with them being forced to do things they don't like, being unhappy, being miserable, having no free will. Listen, being no free will. But if you make it so that people choose to do this thing and are completely happy in every way, then that's just as good or bad as changing someone to, not genuinely have green eyes.
Thaddeus, I have a question. I'm going to present Thaddeus, I'm going to present you with a hypothetical. Okay? And you need to...
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. And you need to...
A hypothetical.
A hypothetical. What is this? Some sort of hypotheticast? So here's the thing. So I'm going to present you with this hypothetical, and you're going to need to follow me all the way through it, and once we get to the end, I'm going to need a simple yes or no. Okay?
I want to see your version of a long tangent.
No, my version of a long tangent is
It's going to be
like,
another hour.
No, my version of a long tangent, I think I literally once went on a 4-hour tangent in a conversation. But that's neither here nor there.
Hey, before you say anything,
yes,
Dylan,
Yes.
you said like 2 things.
Okay.
Say a third thing.
A third thing.
There we go.
Do you want to say anything? I feel like we talk and do you want to say something or you just...
I have something I was wanting to talk about, but it pertains nothing to what's going on. That's fine.
Do we need to change the direction away from slavery?
Maybe. Because I was wanting to ask about, because we've talked about a lot of random cosmetic and mind things to do with the genetics, but we haven't really talked about what would happen if someone decided to say splice their DNA with rhinoceros beetle DNA to make their skin
fish people
to make their skin harder or something.
What she's always wanted.
That would definitely happen, but I don't think it would be government's.
Well, you can't.
It wouldn't be provided by the government.
So let me just say this right now. Obviously, in the future, who knows? But right now, that type of thing, we don't have the ability to, because a rhinoceros beetle DNA is very different than. Right. So if you splice them together,
with the ability,
you wouldn't get the.
I think it'd be
if they had the ability.
I think it'd be less of splicing the 2 DNAs instead of modifying the existing DNA to be akin.
To it. If you wanted which I'm assuming you want the strength and hardness in this scenario of a rhinoceros beetle.
Yeah,
you
it
would,
was just a random...
you would just make it so that a person's genes had, I forget what it's called, but had less of that chemical that makes your muscles smaller.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a chemical that you'd think it'd be the other way around. You'd think a chemical would make muscles bigger, but no.
I think I just made a freaking One Punch Man reference. That rhinoceros beetle guy.
Oh no!
The big rhinoceros beetle guy.
One Punch Man. You mean the perfect, the end goal of humanity?
Yes.
Unironically, One Punch Man would be against this. Saitama would be against genetic alteration.
But
no, he'd want us all to just do 100%.
He got 100% natty gains.
Yeah,
that's what he got.
Going back to what you said earlier about genetic engineering to put humans on Mars and stuff. Just imagine human DNA mixed with tardigrade DNA or something like that.
So we could just swim around in space.
Yeah, basically. Because if you were able to do something like that, then a human could live on any planet basically and be totally fine.
And that's why gene editing is so conceptually it could change everything.
Yeah.
If it gets far enough.
If we got to the point.
If it gets far enough, you might not recognize humans as humans.
I mean, you aren't wrong.
Yeah, humans would be something else entirely.
Yeah. Humans would just
There'd be so many different types of humans technically, because you could have a human slash.
There'd be vanilla humans.
Vanilla humans.
Strawberry humans. Mustachio humans.
Alex Jones. That's the
real red pill. Okay.
Is it always your
Alright, what were you...
Why Alex Jones? Because he's so red.
So the tangent that I was going to go down is actually, I think,
Right, slavery.
Right, so back to slavery. Thaddeus' favorite topic. So here's the thing, Thaddeus. I'm going to give you a hypothetical, and you got to follow me through it.
Okay.
And then at the end, I need an answer.
Okay.
During the period of American slavery.
Okay.
Okay?
Uh-oh.
Seriously, this is important because we've just established that it's fine to make a slave caste as long as that slave caste enjoys being slaves. So, what if slavery didn't end and it just continued for another few hundred years, and there was selective breeding of slaves, as f***ed up as that sounds, let's just say that...
I mean, which there was.
There was. So let's just say that process continued until eventually all of the slaves left in America by 3000 AD. All the slaves left in America were all totally on board with slavery. They really liked it, right? Mm-hmm. At that point, is it immoral to keep them as slaves?
After all that?
Yes. At that point. Let's say you're not a slave owner initially, but you decide to buy a slave who's one of these people who enjoys slavery, right? And then you own that slave. Is that a moral action to own that slave? This is important. Depends. Okay. So.
So you wanted a straight answer, but like, can I give an actual answer?
Yes, you can give an actual answer.
Breeding them to do that, I think, is bad because those people didn't want it.
Okay,
but I think the end result. So like, it's a kind of end justifies the means, except the ends don't justify the means.
It's kind of an ends justify the means. Wow.
Listen, no, I'm not saying
the science of phrenology.
I'm not saying it does. I'm saying it doesn't. That's why I'm saying if you gene edited it, it would just be like you know what I mean, like a switch.
Okay, but the problem is that the problem is that the person...
I'm not even saying that is moral, by the way. I just said, is it? I'm just saying we have to question if it is.
You don't have to question it. You really don't. There is no question. The fact that you say there has to be a question is part of the problem. There is no question.
Everything. Isn't that the point of your guys' podcast?
No. The point of our podcast is to dunk on people. That's not even true.
So you said that the 300 years of slavery was immoral because the people who came before the ones who wanted to be slaves didn't want to be slaves. They didn't have that choice.
At this point.
But hold on. But the people who
you're genetically engineered
did not consent to be such.
Yeah, but
they can't.
But no one consents to be born.
Yeah, but specifically.
Okay, but no one consents to be a slave.
That's not true.
An unborn person does not.
An unborn person does not consent to be a slave.
And I think this is also like going back to the thought of abortion.
Yeah, it is.
The similarities with it, where if
but see, and that's the thing, and then there's there's the abortion argument too. Mm-hmm. So like, but listen, look, I don't.
We don't have time to go on to that tangent.
So listen, I'll just say this. I'm too viscerally opposed to slavery to actually think that that's right.
Okay, just clear.
Okay, just so we're clear.
None of us.
Just to clear your name, Thaddeus Clinch the Fifth.
Yeah, I will not have the Clinch name soiled.
Oh man, we're gonna have a real fun time finding sponsors.
Oh God.
The Slave Cast.
The Slave Cast.
Tales from the Louisiana plantations.
All I'm saying is that just like that's probably the argument that the pro-slave faction would have because then the question of morality kind of goes into like consent morality and stuff,
right?
Which if you don't agree to, that's kind of
it all becomes entirely irrelevant. And I have the unique privilege, I think, of just saying no, slavery bad.
Yeah, so see, it's the difference between. It's the difference between like a consequentialist morality and like a I never know how to pronounce this. Deontological.
Deontological. I think it's deontological. It might be deontological. Deontological. Yes.
Which is the difference of like this thing is bad because it's bad versus this thing is good or bad because of the amount of suffering or consequences it creates. Which so to a consequentialist morality, a slave caste that completely enjoys slavery doesn't create suffering, so it's fine.
Right, which is one of the reasons I would argue that a consequentialist morality is meaningless. But that's not really the point.
Yeah. Anyway.
That's a digression we do not have the time for.
Mm-hmm. So...
And on that really interesting note, we'd like to once again thank our guest, Thaddeus Clinch V, for appearing today here on the Hypotheticast.
We really have to end the podcast on slavery?